Welcome, everyone, to the Dr. Blue Duck podcast. And today we have one of my good buddies, Tyler Thompson, here. Now, Tyler is an amazing, brilliant IT guy. He is a dad. He is a gamer. He's actually one of the gamers who games with me and my buddies on Thursday nights or every other Thursday night from 8:30 to 9:30. A little plug right there if you guys want to watch on the live stream. And he has an amazing story that probably would shock some people. And I'm just going to kind of let him at it. Tyler, why don't you tell us the shocking news about your stories, something that most people would never know about you?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So, yeah, just by looking at me after I get done with my story, you'd be like, hey, you don't seem like somebody who has a story like that. So let's go back to, I guess, growing up, I had a good, solid family. There was divorce in my family, and my parents were, good people. They went to church, and my dad was a police officer. I had a decent upbringing. We had a good life. My parents were divorced when I was younger, and so we didn't have a solid family, but they did the best they could.
And this is all new to me. Like, for example, we game a whole lot every other Thursday nights, and I never knew your dad was a police officer. I never knew your parents were divorced. So yeah, I'm learning all this for the first time, man. Wow.
Yeah. So, I went to church, growing up, and I really was involved in church and really loved that, and kind of, was somebody that, said they believed in Jesus and went to church, and, and I loved all of that. And so, but I didn't really have any, leader in my life to guide me. My dad and my mom were young when they had me, and they worked a lot. And so I was with babysitters and things like that. So I didn't have anybody really to kind of lead me and, show me how to do life from an early age. And
so you didn't have anyone to like disciple you at all.
Right. I didn't, I had adults and, people in my life that were taking care of me and making sure I had a good life, but nobody was really helping me to do life, understand life and grow. So, so I just went about it. I went to school and I tried to go to college. That didn't work out for me just because I can't read a book and then take a test and regurgitate the answers. I have to be hands-on doing. That's why I, fell into IT work like I do now today.
Whoa. I'm going to hold off right there for 1 second, Tyler, because you say that, but you are a super intelligent dude. You seem like you can read really well. And Tyler actually goes to a Bible study life group with me on Sunday mornings. And Tyler is one of the dudes there that just really knows the Bible. So like I hear this, but I don't know, man. Like you seem like you know how to read well. You seem very intelligent. Maybe it was just a hard time when we were younger. I think dudes, I feel like dudes like us, we blossom later on in life sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just have an attention thing, man. I just want to go to the next thing and figure things out. And so I as far as what school goes, I just couldn't sit still in a classroom and read a book, but I learned through other methods, hands-on. So yeah, so I grew up, went to high school, tried college. It just didn't really work out for me. So I got a job early on when I was 18. Working at a TV station, and that was a lot of fun because I was interested in technology, and there's a lot of technology there at TV stations. So yeah, I didn't really have a whole lot of friends in high school, and I kind of just hung out with whoever I hung out with, and didn't really have any solid friends, no community really. And that kind of didn't really work in my favor once I grew up. I was excited to move out, and, I had a job, and then I moved out and I had my job. But I was so focused on my job, I realized after a few months of living on my own, I had no community. And so I started to get depressed. And that's when I think things kind of went downhill for me. When I was in my early 20s, just started getting really depressed because I didn't have community. I'm like, what's the point of my life? I love God and I love going to church, but what is my purpose? And I just, kind of fell into a pretty big depression. And so I started hanging out with people I shouldn't because I didn't have solid community, which led me to start smoking weed and, something that was unheard of. Growing up, I was the church kid and, I had a police officer dad. So drugs are bad, in my mind. But I ended up, drinking and smoking weed on the weekends. And it's not a big deal. I was, in my head, I'm employed, I'm doing good, and I did that for a few years and it was fine until one night, long story short, I ended up, my buddies would come around with other drugs, and I know I'm not doing that stuff. But one time I didn't know what they were doing. He's like, here, try this. And I smoked it. And it ended up being heroin. And I ended up smoking heroin. And it was a pretty big downhill turn after that. Um, I mean, I became addicted pretty quick, started lying to people, I started stealing money, lost my job. And it was a bad time. I mean, it was pretty horrible. And probably about 5 years up and down trying to get off heroin, multiple live-in facilities, sober livings, and nothing really worked because those things almost made it worse for me. I'd go there and people are smoking cigarettes and chain smoking, and the lifestyle of drugs just wasn't the lifestyle. I didn't grow up with a bunch of drug addict families, that were, drugs weren't around me. It was something I fell into from a decent background. So that environment didn't work for me. Trying to get off drugs through the sober livings and NA and AA, those things work for a lot of people. They didn't work. They didn't work for me. So it wasn't until I got arrested for breaking and entering into someone's house that I knew to get cash so that I could go buy drugs because I was just a degenerate, horrible person that didn't care about anybody else. The drugs turned me into that person, And so I was arrested for breaking and entering. I went to jail and was sentenced to a couple of years in jail. And, I knew God. I knew the Bible from a young age. I'd heard sermons. I had read as much as I could, and I knew God, and I believed in God, and I knew Jesus was my savior. I knew that before I went down this downhill road. But I think the head knowledge that I had about God had not connected to my heart and my soul. I had not been, born again. I had believed and I knew, but my head knowledge wasn't a real thing.
I heard a quote once that said sometimes people's hearts haven't yet caught up to their brain.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and wow. I want to go back here. I don't know if this is going back or forward or what here. Now, you are a drummer and a skilled drummer, and one that I've
Skilled,
actually
Terry.
played with one time at our church, and probably will eventually since I'm starting to play bass guitar a little bit more on Sunday mornings. But where did that come from? Where did you drum? Was that when you were drumming? Was that part of the drug addiction? Were you like in a band, or is this something completely separate?
No, totally separate. I actually started playing drums when I was, I don't know, 12 or 13, for church. I had a buddy who was super interested in drums, and he got me really interested in drums. And so my dad got me a drum kit when I was 12, and I played along to CDs because like I said, I'm not the typical sit in a class type of person. So the music theory classes didn't work for me. I had to just listen to CDs and copy what they were doing. And, the rest is history. I've just been playing ever since then, trying to be better and, better my skills. And I love it. It comes naturally. It's a gift and I enjoy it.
Hey, that's where I learned how to play drums too. I was in the sixth grade in some little holy roller church, and they needed a drummer. So, hey, they put me on the drums, and it was just like bass snare, bass snare.
Yeah. Keeping the beat.
Yep, doing that. And, I went from there. So, yeah, good stuff. I wanted to hear
Yeah.
that side story there. I didn't know it was connected.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I'm in jail, right? And I think, being arrested, it didn't, that wasn't my lowest point. I didn't hit rock bottom. I didn't, come to my senses at that point. When I was thrown in the drunk tank in jail, waiting to be sentenced, I still didn't understand, hadn't gotten it together. I got to my jail cell, still was there for a long time in jail before I still hadn't come to my senses. I still was just in the wrong headspace. And it wasn't until I was on the bus, the transport bus to go. So I was at Lerdo prison, which is Lerdo jail, which is about 20 or 30 minutes northwest of Bakersfield. And so I was there, and the sheriff's bus has no window. So you get on this bus, right? You walk in and it's just people lined up. Some people are chained, with their hands up because they're hardcore criminals. So I'm walking in, and I'm somebody, this is brand new for me. I've never been to jail.
Were you like scared, like to death?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't scared to death because I'm like, I got myself here, and I'm not going to die. I know that, but yeah, I was scared, man. It was,
Now you aren't a little skinny wimpy dude. I mean, you're a
I'm
big
a big guy.
dude. Back then, like, since you were on heroin and stuff, were you like, 100 pounds, or were you still kind of a bigger dude?
I was still probably pushing 200 pounds. I mean, I was a big guy. But compared to most of the other people there in jail. Yeah, but it was scary. I mean, it was brand new. And this, even though I had gotten involved in drugs, I hadn't gone down so far down that road that I had gotten into needles and things where I was so bad. I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as you see some people on the street nodded out. But yeah, it was scary. So I'm walking, I'm kind of chained up and I'm walking to the back of the bus, there's guys sitting down and I see my spot and I'm sitting down and there's these other big burly guys, people with tattoos, and I'm just kind of like, what am I doing, and the bus starts driving off and I just close my eyes and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? My life is out of control. And I just said, God, if you're there, I need help. I have blown it. I have messed up and I can't do it. So I need you to show up and change me and make me better. And Terry, he did, man. Like right with my eyes, my eyes were closed and I'm just kind of talking and praying to God. And I felt God's presence. And I hear people say that. They say, oh, God spoke to me and God was there. And I believe that if it happens and if it, some people, but it was there. It was real. I can't explain it, but I felt the presence of God. And I felt like the weight of everything I'd ever done wrong in my life just crushing me for about a second. And then it was gone. And I felt the most peace I'd ever felt in my life. And without even knowing what was happening, my mouth shot open and I started singing. Yeah. Were these guys here? I'm crying and I'm singing and I'm, any song that came to mind, I'm singing to God, these, hymn, I can't even remember what the song was, but I started singing and I'm crying and I realized at that moment what it meant to be forgiven eternally by God. I had heard the words, God has forgiven me of my sin, but I felt my sin in that moment and I felt it go away. And it was, that's when my heart finally, made the connection. Long story short, that was a long time ago. And God has walked me through several areas of life to get me back on track. One of those being through Teen Challenge, but it's been a long journey. But now I'm not a druggie, I'm a dad. And I love it,
From druggie to dad.
From druggie to daddy, And I used to
God can do.
Exactly. He can work miracles. And I know it looks like I might be living in a house like I'm still a heroin addict. It's all crazy. Nope, I'm just a dad, and
That's
this is my office / laundry tower 5,000 that I built. And
we were talking a few weeks ago when we were streaming live playing some Fortnites that there's like broke and then there's dad broke. And when you say your dad broke in life, it just means that, yeah, you don't have any money. You're not going to have any money anytime soon.
Right. You have it, yeah, but you don't have it.
Yeah, you don't have it. It's going towards other things there. And I just thought that was, man, we could do a whole segment on what it means to be a dad broke and being a dad and all of that. So, when you were in jail, how long were you there for?
So because of the overcrowding, I think I was supposed to be there like 2 or 3 years. Because of overcrowding, I think I was only there about 6 months.
Okay.
But I say that now, but it felt like forever.
Yeah. Yeah. So can I ask this question? During the drug addiction, during the, inserting needles, being a heroin addict, living that type of lifestyle and being in jail, was there a moment that stands out to you that was just completely scary or just something that was just very frightening?
Well, I'd say the most frightening part, I think, was when because when you're arrested, they take you downtown to the smaller jail to kind of do processing. And then if you are going to be held for a long time, they transport you somewhere else. And so when I was arrested and I went to like the small cell downtown and I, kind of went to sleep and woke up the first couple of nights, I still kind of was not, I hadn't come to really. I hadn't kind of come out of my drug fog. I wasn't really, conscious really. And so I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't care. It wasn't until I kind of few days later, when I was being transported to the other facility, when you have to walk across, there's these gated pods of 40 or 50 guys, and there's a big yard in the middle. And you have to walk all the way across the yard to pick up your brand new mattress, or washed, disgusting old mattress, and walk it back to wherever you're supposed to go. Even before I got into this, I had anxiety. I didn't like being up in front of crowds, but here I'm walking in front of everybody that's jailed up, and then have to walk over and, meet and talk to the leader of the pod. And that was, it was just terrifying, because I don't know, I had only seen things about jail in movies, that's all. And it's really not like it is.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like we're quoting an episode from The Office where you have Prison Mike.
Prison Mike.
Yeah. Is it like what Prison Mike said it was like, or not really like that?
No, it's not really at all like what Prison Mike talked about. There's
no Dementors.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not any place you want to be, but it's not it's not horrendous, but it's some place you don't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you get clean off of drugs?
So
You had that very epiphany moment
Yes.
there where you understood and felt God really forgiving you for all your sins and being there with you. Then, I mean, was that it? Was that the moment, or?
So that was the moment, and I decided at that moment, I'm going to serve God. My life's going to turn around, and and that's that. But I didn't know how that was going to happen. But I just prayed and read the Bible. There's a Bible study and church at jail that I started going to, and started leading a Bible study. But I prayed a lot in jail. Lord, what do you want me to do? I don't care if I'm sentenced to stay here for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. You lead me, and I'll follow. And so through a series of supernatural events, the Lord told me to go to Teen Challenge. In short, my cellmate was like, hey, there's this place called Teen Challenge. Since you are used to going to church, you might like it. That's, you go stay there for a year, and it's basically church every day, and you just have a community of people who are trying to get off drugs and follow Jesus. And I said, that sounds great. Sounds awesome. How do I sign up? And so I prayed about it, and, typical prayers, you don't have Gabriel coming down trumpeting the answer right to your ears. It usually comes through other means. And so I prayed about it, and the house that I had broken into was somebody that I knew. It was the father of somebody that I was engaged to. Very good, godly man, police officer. He came and visited me in jail, and he, to reconcile. He wanted to say that he forgave me and that he wanted to help me, get back on my feet. And he said, there's this place called Teen Challenge I want you to go to. And I was like, well, that's great, because that's where I already want to go. And I've been praying, for an answer. And,
So were you engaged to this girl still at this time, or did that kind of like end the deal?
No, we were engaged, and I started down my road of addiction while we were engaged. Then right before we got married, I broke it off and told her that, I had a drug addiction. And so then it was probably a year or two later. It was
okay,
really crazy down, much later down the road that I was into my addiction. But I just knew, in my addiction, in that horrible state, and in my, conniving mind, I knew that I could easily get in there and get money. But it was, God had basically told me you should go to Teen Challenge. And so I did. And that's where my life really changed, because it was about the community. There's, for 14 months, you're with all the same guys and going through the same things, learning about how to live life correctly, and enjoy life, and not have to substances to mask feelings, that there are other things out there like therapy and medication and, community. That's what Teen Challenge helped me find, set me on the right path. And I've just been chugging along, as best as I can.
So a lot of people don't know the ending of the story to this point right here. They don't know that you're the father of 2 little girls. You have an amazing wife. You have a home. You have a great job. Yeah, like give people some information on that. Like how did that all come to play?
So after Teen Challenge, I got a job and worked off my debts and kind of built my life back up, my credit. And once I kind of was stable, I was like, okay, I want to settle down. I've always wanted a family, and I met my wife online, and we fell in love, and God has just directed each step. And, then we had our first child, and I've just kind of jumped around IT jobs. And then we had our second child, and I was very stressed out. And I landed a very great job at a school district that has allowed me to have the free time to be at home or in the places that I need to be to, support the kids and be there for them and play with them. And it's a good job that's stress free, which was one thing that was hard for me with other IT jobs, and things are great. We have everything. We were just sitting on the porch eating ice cream cones, and I looked at my wife and I said, we have just such a great life. Like, we have every need met and more. Looking around at all the girls' toys, and we're just, I have just a phenomenal life. And
Yeah.
that's all. I never thought that I would, in my addiction, thinking this is it, I'm going to die like this. And so to have such a cool ending of the story, or, this part of the story moving and continuing on, it's
Now,
good.
and that's really cool, Tyler, because this can bring hope to other people who are maybe in the middle of addiction still. All types of different addictions that people have, just obviously substance abuse addictions, but there's people addicted to all types of things. We as humans, I mean, we just get addicted to things really easily. So maybe you can help some people out here from your experience. How do you not go back to that lifestyle? Do you have to set certain boundaries in your life or not be around certain things, or is there no temptation whatsoever?
So after I went through Teen Challenge, I actually went back to work there for a year to counsel and help men. It actually ended up being a little too much for me emotionally, so I had to stop because it was hard. But I'd say everyone is different. I've had so many people come to me and say, I know so and so, and they're addicted, and I want to help, and I don't know what to do. And it's hard because I typically have to give them the answer of, there's nothing you can do. They have to make the choice. You can pray for them and provide a good environment and encourage them. But until that person is ready, all of your efforts, you can try and try and try, but you spin your wheels until that person is ready to change. And so for me, I was ready, and I was ready to change. And, there was some temptation, I think, after maybe for a year or two, maybe here and there, maybe, but there really hasn't been much temptation at all. And I know that's different for some people. There's people that I graduated Teen Challenge with that have to have safeguards, and they set up boundaries, and they don't hang out with certain people, and they, or if, if they had a drug problem or something, but they didn't have an alcohol problem, they still don't hang out with people that drink alcohol, but for me, I don't have, one of the things that, one of the things I discussed when we moved, because I moved away from where I am from and met my wife, and then we realized we were going to have to move back. And that was one of the topics of discussion is it okay to move back? Is there going to be things? And I kind of thought about it, and I'm like, well, maybe, but I don't think so. And we've been here 3-something years, and not once has there ever been any sort of, nothing. I think God has really just pushed that so far from my mind. And I thank God for that, because not everybody has that blessing. Some people struggle their whole lives.
Yeah. And yeah, that's great to acknowledge, man. And then again, if we look at your life, like, you're not going out and partying with dudes,
Right,
who are
right.
doing stuff like that. From what I know is you spend most of your time with your family or at work, or you're at church or your life group, or, playing on the worship team,
Gaming with you.
gaming with me and our other two gaming bros from our life group, which, I'm just going to nerd out here and say that I just absolutely love our gaming nights.
I do too.
Before we started our life group, I even told my wife, Alicia, I said, man, it'd be really cool if, like, someday we were in like a life group, and some of the guys in there, like, we all met, like, every so often, and just like streamed together. And it was just one of those like dreams that would never really happen, because there's just not a lot of cool dudes out there who are, mature people who you actually want to spend time with gaming. But I feel like we really captured that, and we really have that. And it's just going with what you and Jenna, your wife, were talking about on the porch, that, man, we really do have so much. And it's so easy to start looking at all the things we don't have and get obsessed with that. Man, we're not the most wealthy people in the world. We're not the most famous people in the world. We're not the most in shape people in the world. We're not this or that. And then, yeah, right here. And then we just put ourselves down, and we think life is horrible. But if we really look around, we have so much. And since this podcast is geared for dads and gaming dads specifically, it's like that's a good reminder because there's all these stressors that are just kind of placed on us that we always think we got to be doing all these other things. We all have to have a side gig. We all have to be pursuing some way to be an entrepreneur or make some, multi-million dollar business on the side and do this and that. And I think a lot of times those are all just distractions from the goodness that we have in our life. And we were blessed with, we have jobs, we have homes, we have food, we have families, we have wives, we have kids, we have all those things. And it's like sometimes instead of just enjoying those things and appreciate those things like these thoughts come into our mind and it just turns our head this way. Oh, you need to be pursuing this. You need to be pursuing this. And we fall into those distractions where we ignore the family and the gifts that God has given us that are right in front of us. And really, that's such a great tragedy when we're so concerned about pursuing other things that we don't see what we actually have. And in a way, that pull to success or that distraction to be overly ambitious, that right there can be a sort of addiction for some people, especially a lot of the people in our age demographic who feel this entrepreneurial pull to be the next Elon Musk or the next whatever dude is doing something amazing at this time. But I think we kind of talked about that even a little bit with your gaming tag name. What was it again?
I've changed it so many times. It's Lunch Dream Dad. Lunch Dream Dad. It's a deep track quote from The Office.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Michael, I can't remember what it is, but he has some crazy idea and he's talking about it and he's like, we have to do this. And they're like, no, he's like, oh, we have to do this. This has been a dream of mine since lunch. And I resonate with that, so much because I feel like I just, something will pop in my head and I'm like, that's it. And now I'm 110% into that idea, for the 2 weeks until I realize, this isn't that great of an idea. And then another idea comes and I'm off doing that, for 2 weeks. But
I hear you. And let's just hope that this podcast is not that.
Yes, this is just for fun, right?
Yeah, this is for fun. If this is the last episode of the Dr. Blue Duck podcast, you'll know that was that.
Yeah.
A dream I had since 2 weeks ago.
Yes. Since lunch.
Well, Tyler, something else you said, and I kind of want to end on this. When you were getting ready to go to jail and you had that prayer time where you just truly like reached out to God and you felt that he was real to you. I think that prayer was a powerful one. And I can almost kind of think if there's a viewer out there who's listening right now and they haven't made that decision to fully surrender their life to God, and they're in those difficult situations and they're feeling depressed or they're feeling addicted or they're feeling that there's no hope, man, I just want to encourage them to even just rewind this podcast to that spot where you said that prayer and pray that very same prayer, and they can life's like radically changed the way your life is radically changed. And it just blew me away when you told me that you were addicted to drugs there, that you were a drug addict for a while, because from everything I see about you, like no one would guess that. I would have never guessed that. So in our life group Bible study at church, you always had such inputs. And when you're involved in a Bible study and there's a lot of people there, you have some people volunteer answers and say certain things. And it's like, that's cool. But then you have some people volunteer things and you're like, dude, that is straight up wisdom. Man, that guy knows his word. He is knowledgeable. And you're one of those guys in Bible study when you contribute to those discussions. It's just like, man, he's legit. And maybe it's, that whole past is something that's kind of helped, make pave the way for you to be what you are now. But I'm stoked that you are who you are now. I see you as such like an effective like minister and leader and father to your kids, and just the super cool stuff that you do, the way you serve your family, the way you serve your other people. And your whole job as an IT guy is serving teachers. And we know that is difficult. I know that's a pain being an art teacher myself. Some teachers are difficult to deal with sometimes. And the fact that you serve people in your job, serving them it says a whole lot about your character, man. So I just think you're awesome. Keep being awesome. And yeah, anything else?
Thank you, Cherry. Thank you. I appreciate that. One thing, real quick, I do want to add, because I remember being a young kid in church and hearing stories like this, these crazy stories that how, lives are radically changed. If you're listening, you're out there and you don't have this crazy, what would look like on the surface intense story, that's okay. God changes everybody's lives. I mean, you could just, whatever you're dealing with. I mean, it can be depression, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be some crazy radical story. God can change your life. And I can't imagine living my life now without God, because it's just, everything is better.
Totally.
It's not perfect, by any means. It's not rainbows and butterflies, but it's a whole nother life.
I mean, we're not famous. We're not super in shape. We're not rich.
No.
Things aren't perfect. There's struggles. We get sick sometimes, but we can see all that we've been given. And salvation, eternal salvation is the big one, and everything beyond that is just super awesome as well.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, Tyler Thompson, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. And to everyone out there, be kind, use your mind, and game on.